Started off as a PG podcast, but then Devin just kept on dropping shits and fucks, and
I'm just trying to figure out what's in her mouth.
I just want to see him interview Francesco Accoli.
He's a good human being, is what he would say about himself, I'm sure.
Who's hosting this thing?
Take charge, Kevin, would you? Jesus.
First time we ever met those guys. That was the major drunken pub argument.
I think you guys are the worst.
I'm gonna have to probably watch some Canucks hockey, unfortunately.
Just making friends left, right, and center, and probably some enemies as well.
Tell him to shut up. He needs to hear that every once in a while.
Off to a good start.
All right. We are live.
It's okay to talk when it goes live.
There we go. Let's go on and on. Talking is great, especially when you have a game like this. The Winnipeg Jets were down 4-1 midway through the third period. The Jets rolled back, and Nikolai Ehlers in overtime snipes it in. The Jets are up have a 3-0 series lead with a 5-4 overtime victory. Welcome to the Hockey Podcast. Of course, you can follow us on Twitter, podcast_hockey, as well as you can like us on Facebook, facebook.com, the Hockey Podcast, where we are live, youtube.com, the Hockey Podcast, where we are currently sitting at 100 and Mark Giordano of subscribers. And of course, you can subscribe to the audio after. Very interesting, significant day in NHL playoffs, but the big story, we'll focus on the Jets and the Oilers here for most of this. But we got some other stuff to get to as well. If you have some comments or questions, we'll get to those as well. It's me, Kevin, flying solo here. And we'll start basically with the Jets Oilers. Fantastic start for the Oilers. Leon Draisaitl, 3 points. Connor McDavid, 3 points. And the Oilers were off to a great start, 2-0 in the first period. Really took control there. And then the Jets came out in the second period, and they started to kind of push the play a little bit, and it was back and forth, and I mean, Mike Smith was sharp. Connor Hellebuck had to be sharp. And the returning Nikolai Ehlers, who we talked about this morning, getting him back would be key. He scores his first of the playoffs on the power play, and it's 2-1. But Zach Kassian, who for the first 40 minutes, I mean, whether you like Zach Kassian or not, he was getting under the skin of the Winnipeg Jets defense. He was getting under Logan Stanley's skin. He was getting under Derek Forbert's skin. And he got a well-deserved shift with Connor with 97 and 29. And going into the third period, the Oilers were up 3-1. And they got we talked about that. The Oilers got what they needed. They got some secondary scoring to add to McDavid and Draisaitl, who you knew were not going to be shut down for the rest of this playoffs. And certainly offensively, both McDavid and Draisaitl were there. We'll get to defensively though in a moment. And then Jujhar Khaira scores, makes it 4-1, and it looks at that particular point that the Edmonton Oilers are well on their way. They got everything that they needed in this game. They got McDavid and Draisaitl back on the board. They were getting secondary scoring. Kassian, Khaira, Devin Shore, who they put in the lineup, got an assist. It's all looking good. Josh Archibald, who has been playing very well, quite simply took a very, very questionable penalty, very dumb penalty. He to Logan Stanley, and Matthew Perreault was able to capitalize on it from Kopp and Dubois, and it made it 4-2. That wasn't the big deal. It was then what got me. I was like, yeah, it's 4-2. I think everything should be okay. But when Kyle Connor got that shot off on Mike Smith just shortly after that, I thought, okay, the Jets are coming back here. We could see it, and then Blake Wheeler from Morrissey and Shifley at 14:28. And then Josh Morrissey, 16 seconds later, makes it 4-4. And we're headed to overtime. A huge collapse. And it's not, it's not only the Josh Archibald penalty that I think is the problem here. You look at that Blake Wheeler goal, the defense on there, he was standing wide open there. Even the Josh Morrissey goal, questionable play by McDavid trying to clear it out, but the defense wasn't there as well. And then in overtime, both teams coming flying out, and Nikolai Ehlers gets his second goal of the game, and snipe, what a shot too, just a beautiful little snipe, and that's it. The Winnipeg Jets are now up from Paul Stastny, who has 2 points in the playoffs, at 9-13, Winnipeg 5, Edmonton 4. Winnipeg is now up 3-0. Full credit, first of all, we just have to we'll address the winners here. Winnipeg Jets were outstanding in terms of what they did. They showed that Josh Archibald, you could see when Matthew Perreault was jumping up and down, you could feel a little bit that some momentum was coming, but 2 goals. At that particular point, the Winnipeg Jets only had 4 goals in this entire series, and they were not getting production from their top line. So their second power play unit was key, but it was that when Kyle Connor came in and you started to see that momentum, that's when this came. And they, talk about the Oilers and McDavid and Draisaitl, that Winnipeg Jet forward group, has, especially now that Nikolai Ehlers is in there, and he was a guy that has been much maligned in the playoffs. He was by far, I thought, one of the, if not the best, one of the best Jets players. 2 goals, 3 shots, 15-46. You just see when he was on the ice, he was making things happen. And Kopp and Lowry were outstanding again, and it just they got off. They had a slow start, but once that power play goal, and once you get that power play goal, you're on your way there for sure. And then the defense again, although not the best day in terms of offense, but they hung in there again. Neil Pionk, Josh Morrissey, his first multi-point game in the playoffs. Neil Pionk a point. Dylan DeMello +2, 3 shots on goal, 1 hit, 25 minutes. Derek Forbort gave you 24 minutes, 3 shots on goal, 3 hits, 3 blocks. And yes, Kellner Hellebuck allowed 4 goals, but made 44 saves. And right after the Jets tied, the Oilers came right back, and Hellebuck stood his ground. So for the Winnipeg Jets, you have to give them credit for this comeback. Again, they got secondary scoring. Again, their depth came through. Again, their perseverance came through. And for the Edmonton Oilers, though, the other side of this is this defense was the defensive posture at the end of this game was garbage. Just terrible, awful, undisciplined garbage. I don't understand what Josh Archibald was thinking there, but that's not part of the problem. That's one of the problems. The Blake Wheeler goal, no defense appeared there at all. Kyle Connor was able to walk in. It's just defensively for the Oilers, even the overtime before the Nikolai Ehlers goal, Dmitry Kulikov, for some reason, skating in front of Mike Smith, carrying the puck dangerously. Just when the heat was on, the Oilers defensive game, and I'm not saying only defensive game just didn't seem to be there. And when Jets started buzzing, they just took over. And yes, we can say, wow, look at the points from Connor McDavid and Leon Draisaitl. And yes, of course, McDavid 3 assists, Draisaitl 2 goals and an assist, but McDavid's defense wasn't great. And just a tough night overall. Slater Kukoc +2, Tyson Barrie +1, Darnell Nurse 1 shot and goal, 1 hit, but 31 minutes. He was a monster. He was out there a lot. Him and Ethan Bear were out there a lot. Bear 4 shots on goal, Barrie 4 shots on goal, but just defensive structure and perseverance were just not there for the Edmonton Oilers. Ryan Nugent-Hopkins, no points tonight, 6 shots on goal, 3 hits. He was active, but A lot of guys, again, I mean, they got some secondary scoring, but it's pretty significant overtime for 97-29 in the Edmonton Oilers, considering all that was happening, all of this playoff buzz. You look back at that last year's playoffs against the play-ins with the Chicago Blackhawks. You came in thinking that the Edmonton Oilers have learned some lessons. Folks, the Edmonton Oilers have not learned a single lesson. They are still in the belief of having that offensive. It's all offense, and they needed to lock it down, and they just simply couldn't do it. And now they are one win away from being eliminated. And as much as Oilers media is going to say with Connor McDavid, anything is possible, it's just so rare that a 3-0 lead has been evaporated. We remember 2011, but the Canucks were able to hang on there. And I just, McDavid or not, you blew a 3-goal lead, 4 unanswered goals, and you have to come back from that in a back-to-back. I think it's a very interesting situation. So I think for the Jets, you got to feel really good for them. And Paul Maurice, I think, has done a fantastic job. He adjusted things as he went along in it. I think there's going to be a lot of questions to Dave Tippett. One of the questions will be, why did you not take a timeout? That will be one. Some adjustments need to be made. And, as I noted from a note from one tweet from a friend of mine, this has to lay on somewhere on the coach. And these 2 playoff performances, while the Oilers regular season has been good, the 2 playoff performances here with Dave Tippett to play in they're 1-6 under Dave Tippett, or 1-7, I think, under Dave Tippett. 1 win so far. And I just think that that's very interesting there. And the depth of the Oilers, as we have one comment here. Oilers have no from Luis Manuel Teixeira. Oilers have no depth as well as defensive depth. They also have no muscle to protect their stars. Winnipeg started flexing their weight around in the third, and it showed by the end result. Yeah, absolutely. Winnipeg has been the mentally tougher team in this series. No question about it. You look back even in game 2, 5-on-3, Dylan DeMello makes the block. The Jets defense was monstrous, and we talked about that on the podcast as well. So. You have to give him credit. Parallax Prophecy is back. How about them Jets? Daniel saying that game was entertaining. It was entertaining. This series has been an entertaining series for game 2 and game 3. Anyway, game 1 was a little lackluster. But, hey, if you're a Winnipeg Jets fan, you got to be feeling really good. Your first home victory against the Oilers since 1990. Now, to be fair, you haven't played the Oilers since 1990. Since the late 80s, early 90s. So huge win for the Winnipeg Jets. You can see playoff experience happening there. You can see having not championship pedigree, but playoff winning pedigree. Playoff experience is so key. For the Jets, I just think that this is just built. And Connor Hellebuck, for all the struggles, even against, and Sean and Tom mentioned that on the podcast as well, how Connor Hellebuck has struggled against the Oilers during the regular season. He has turned his game on. He has been the best goalie in this series, and it's no disrespect to Mike Smith. I think Mike Smith has been great too, but he's been back to his normal self. And the Jets are just playing a more complete series right now, and you have to give them credit. You simply got to give the Winnipeg Jets the credit. They deserve to be up 3-0. I know that there's going to be stats whirling around here, how well the Oilers are playing. Look, they just haven't mentally done it. And I think that goes to the players. I think that there's some criticism to Connor McDavid and Leon Draisaitl on their defensive play. Some criticism to their Ryan Nugent-Hopkins and their forwards and their defense, and some criticism needs to be given to Dave Tippett here as well, and Ken Holland, who, as Kevin Bieksa pointed out, he didn't do enough to build that bottom depth forward piece needed in the playoffs. I know that there was talk about a Brandon Sutter or a Derek Ryan or something like that, but he never went out and got that, and I think that hurt them for sure. But the game 4 is tomorrow. We will see what happens. Is it the final game? Did the Jets sweep or the Oilers survive? We will be back to recap that. Parallax Prophecy points out, I can't imagine being an Oiler fan and feeling exactly the opposite of what I just felt. Yeah, geez, my Oiler, the Twitter, the Oilers are just terribly bummed. But for the Jets fans, you got to be feeling extremely happy, very excited that you're one win away from advancing to the North Division Final. So kudos for that as well. We'll just touch on the other series here. Two series ended today. The Boston Bruins, after losing to the first game in overtime to the Washington Capitals, have won the last 4, and they have eliminated the Capitals and have moved on to the East semifinal. I think it's going to be a very interesting off season for the Washington Capitals. I think a lot of questions are going to be there. You look at the situation of how a number of their players handled COVID protocols. I think that's something that's going to be questioned. I think there's going to be questions unfairly, I might add, about Alex Ovechkin. I don't think he's the problem. I'm sorry. I think you need to build around him. I still think he's a star player. I still think he's a good leader. And yes, the Capitals haven't won a series since they've won the Stanley Cup, but I think some things around them need to be fixed. That's an organization that absolutely misses their former coach, Barry Trotz, and whatever he brought. And you can see a difference there. You can see how the Islanders are playing and how Washington is playing. That there's a difference there. So I do wonder about Peter Laviolette. I wonder if that is what his future is going forward, if that's a position that they end up replacing. I'll be curious about that. Goaltending, 19 shots for the Bruins, and there were times the Capitals were pressing during the game, and the Bruins, they got goals at timely times. And Patrice Bergeron second goal, probably one Samsonov needs to have back. But Boston, a lot of people thinking that they weren't going to make the playoffs, but they lost Torrey Krug, they lost Zdeno Chara, and they have found a way to replace them and continue on. And don't discount the Bruins. They know what they're doing. Don Sweeney, a very strong general manager and a very good coach in Bruce Cassidy. The Bruins organization, love them or not, they find ways to win, and they've won for the 4th straight year. They are advancing to the second round of the playoffs. The Colorado Avalanche have swept the St. Louis Blues. They knocked off the Blues 5-1 today. I think just not much of a surprise to me. I mean, the Avalanche were up here, way up, and the Blues were there. Just too many injuries for the Blues. They just couldn't keep up with the firepower that the Avalanche have up and down that lineup. Tyson Jost, third line, would be a second line in some places. Cale Makar, outstanding. McKinnon, outstanding. They're going to be a tough out. Of course, they were my pre-playoff pick to win the Stanley Cup. We'll see what happens with the Golden Knights and the Wild for Game 5, but could be if it's the Avs and the Golden Knights, that will be a very interesting series, but we'll see there. For the Blues, just a lot of injuries, a lot of things going on there. Very interesting contract they've given Jordan Binnington as well. So that'll be another off season in St. Louis that I think will be fascinating as well. Another double overtime in Nashville, and Luke Cunnin does it. And the Carolina Panthers were up 2-0, are now the Carolina Hurricanes, not the Carolina Panthers. The Carolina Hurricanes were leading that series 2-0. The Nashville Predators, on the strength of 2 double overtime wins at home this weekend from Matt Duchene, the game winner Friday, Luke Cunnin, double overtime. The Predators are back in the series, and that's, give the Predators credit. They were down and out for most of the season. They've been down and out a number of times, and they keep finding a way to hang in there. The Hurricanes are letting them hang around. Even in some of these games, they are letting these guys hang around, and they're finding ways to do it. That defense is strong. Their forward group, although much maligned, is getting it for the Predators, are getting it done, and be a very exciting best of 3 going on there. So that's that. The other thing is Nazem Kadri will be appealing his 8-game suspension. He's going to be speaking to Gary Bettman. According to Elliot Friedman, Gary Bettman has the opportunity to either increase the suspension, keep it as is, or lower it. If Kadri is not satisfied, he can go to an independent arbitrator as well. So that will go on. We had a conversation about Kadri's suspension on our regular Sunday morning podcast that you can go and have a listen to as well. And a couple of other comments here. From I hope it might have finally happened. Caps might be a bad team for a while. They had a ridiculous run. They did. That's true. It'd be very interesting to see what happens in Washington there, and also the game was very good in Smashville. Was a good hockey game as well. But let's leave it there. Leave your comments and stuff. We will be back tomorrow night, recapping the two games, the Montreal Canadiens and the Toronto Maple Leafs game 3, and then game 4, Winnipeg Jets, Edmonton Oilers doubleheader. So we'll be back after the Jets Oilers game. Follow Sean Beardy Canucks 03. Tyler is TNOBLE. Devin Gordhow 09. Chris is Schneids SCHNEIDZ. INKVOLE. Podcast_hockey. Facebook.com The Hockey Podcast. YouTube.com The Hockey Podcast. Thanks everyone for watching and listening. We will talk to you all very soon. Bye for now.